Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Access Blockbusters Pod. It is episode number 34. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and oh my goodness, what a week it has been in the world of movies and pop culture and fandom. It's been so exciting. So can't wait to talk about all those things with you guys here. And up front, let me just get the elephant out of the room. Let me address it right away. I know this is a little bit late. I apologize for that. I have unfortunately been moving around a lot, been traveling a little bit, and so I would have loved to have, I did those immediate breaking news videos on the YouTube channel when San Diego Comic-Con was coming up, but I didn't have a chance, unfortunately, didn't have some time to record and upload a full-length podcast about this until now. So thank you for bearing with me. I hope you guys enjoyed those breaking news videos, as I was just so excited about everything that was announced, and we'll be doing this again, I think, in about a week, as long as everything goes to plan and I'm able to do it. We'll be doing this one more time, where we will be covering the events of D23, and hopefully a lot more breaking news will be coming out of there. But for now, we have just so much to talk about from San Diego Comic-Con, and I've broken it down into 4 sort of bigger, broader topics that we will be discussing here. So yeah, guys, it's been really exciting. Deadpool and Wolverine came out about a week ago. Hopefully you guys saw the film, enjoyed the film. If you have seen the film, or even if you haven't, last week's episode, full-length podcast episode, was a full review and discussion about Deadpool and Wolverine, both non-spoiler and spoiler. So if you have or haven't seen the film, make sure to check that episode out. I go in depth on all of my thoughts about the film, about all the characters, the surprises, the cameos, but also the action, the humor, all the good stuff from Deadpool and Wolverine, and you don't want to miss that episode. So let's not delay any further, and let's get into it. Before we do, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like if you're watching it on YouTube, or the podcast is also available on Spotify as well. So if you are on Spotify, if you prefer to listen only via audio, thank you so much anyways for listening. I really appreciate it. No matter where you're listening from, just appreciate you taking some time to hang out with me. And yeah, make sure to leave a rating on Spotify as well. All right, guys, let's get started here with the first topic out of the 4. So we're going to be going through sort of, like I said, 4 of these bigger topics from Comic-Con. A couple of them from DC, although DC didn't really have a presence in Comic-Con. They didn't have their own Hall H kind of panel because James Gunn is off and filming Superman right now. But during the events so they did have a smaller panel about the Batman, which, I don't think too much was discussed there, revealed there, that we didn't already know, though we will get to that in the next segment. But for this segment, I wanted to talk about the trailer for Creature Commandos, which dropped during the events during the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con 2024. Now, for those of you who have been following with the news of this new DCU, so now the DC Universe, not the DC Extended Universe, the reboot of the DC properties, Creature Commandos is going to be the first property released by James Gunn. Now, James Gunn, about a year or so, maybe a couple years ago, made this video where he talked about all the different projects that are going to be coming up with this new DCU, and what he envisions and what he plans for moving forward. And, one of the big things, obviously, was Superman Legacy, now retitled to Superman, which is currently filming and will be released next summer in July, which is really exciting. I'm so excited for that Superman film. It looks great so far with all the promo images and the suit and everything. Looks great. Looks awesome. But actually, the first project it was revealed that was going to come out from the DCU is actually Creature Commandos, which is interesting because Creature Commandos is actually an animated series. Now, you have your MCU, right? And the MCU does some animated stuff here and there, but generally speaking, the animated projects in the MCU are not what I would call directly related to what's going on in the mainstream universe. Obviously, they can be, and I think that you'll have a show like Eyes of Wakanda that's coming out at some point soon that I think will be more related to the canon events. But, shows like X-Men 97 and shows like What If are not essential viewing, let's say, for people who are following the universe. However, one of the things that James Gunn did when he drew out his universe is that not only was he also continuing that tradition of doing both shows and films, which I am a little bit mixed on, and maybe in the future we'll do a whole other video essay about why I think that that strategy is maybe backfiring a little bit. But regardless, you have your shows and your movies, but not only that, you have your animated shows as well. And these animated shows will very much be a part of the canon of the DCU, having the original voice actors, not even the original voice, the original actors who will be playing these characters in live action will be voicing them in animation and vice versa. So it'll basically just be another medium to watch stories, I guess, that maybe the budgets won't allow for, or I'm not entirely sure what the delineation is here. Maybe something that he wants to get out quicker will go into animation. I'm not entirely sure. So anyways, Creature Commandos is the first project up. We got our first trailer. Now, Creature Commandos is, if you could put, the most James Gunn of James Gunn projects, it is Creature Commandos. And I think the trailer addresses this, right? It's not a super long trailer, but it is very much in the vein of Suicide Squad and of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, meet all these new creatures. You have your title cards. You have Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein. You have G.I. Robot. You have Weasel, all these disparate characters that are coming together. Obviously, Amanda Waller makes a comeback, and you have Rick Flag Sr. as well, which is really interesting. We'll get to Rick Flag in just a second, both the senior and the junior characters. But anyways, so yeah, we will... we're seeing this group of heroes put together. What is interesting about this series is that if you didn't know any better, right? If you didn't know that the DCEU is rebooting into the DCU, you could have been forgiven if you had just seen The Suicide Squad into thinking that this was just some direct sequel to The Suicide Squad. In fact, I don't even know if it's not. Who even knows? Maybe The Suicide Squad is really just the first film in the DCU, as it turns out, when James Gunn, when it's all said and done. Maybe it's the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and then Superman. I don't know, because it really does seem like James Gunn is just making his stuff, the stuff that he did when he was there at the old DC, as just part of canon in the DCU, which is a little, I'm not gonna lie. On the one hand, I get it. It's James Gunn. He's beholden to stuff he did. He loves the stuff he did. I love the stuff that he did, Suicide Squad in 2021 and Peacemaker. But on the other hand, if you're gonna wipe the slate clean, I feel like it's a lot better if you just wipe the slate clean, right? So it's a little odd and a little confusing to me that he just wants to cling to this continuity, because it really seems like in this trailer you have Amanda Waller, voiced by Viola Davis, who is, again, incredible. And then you have Rick Flag Sr., who, not Rick Flag Jr. So I guess, even if it wasn't connected to the continuity of the old DCEU, that's fine. Except we also got news, it was confirmed on Instagram, I believe, by Joel Kinnaman, who played Rick Flag in the original films, that version of Rick Flag will also be returning to the DCU in Peacemaker Season 2. So again, it really almost feels like James Gunn went, okay, so we're going to wipe the slate clean. No more DCEU, no more Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, no more Henry Cavill. But we're going to keep everything that I did. So the Suicide Squad is basically ground zero. It's basically the start of the DCU, which is, I don't know. Maybe if that were the case, I just wish he had come out and said it. He's like, guys, it's the Suicide Squad. It is Peacemaker minus that one Justice League scene, minus that one scene. And I mean, that's fine, because pretty much if you go from there, I think it works out. I think everything is fine. The fact that he didn't do that, and he's insisting, well, no, we kind of want to do it where like some of the things are staying the same and some of the things are different, whatever, just muddies the water a little bit. Anyways, that's a long aside to talk about, to get around talking about the trailer. The trailer itself, I think, is fine. I think the animation style is cute. It is sort of in that vein of the Harley Quinn show that DC has been doing, which is fantastic. I think that's really fun. But that medium works for Harley Quinn because that show is so bombastic and over the top that it kind of makes sense. I feel like this medium, I'm not entirely sure if they're committed to this style of art. Maybe they'll do different ones for different shows, but it seems fine for what they're doing. The cast of characters, obviously the cast itself is stacked, right? You have a lot of members from the Suicide Squad coming back, Steve Agee, Viola Davis, but you also have Frank Grillo, David Harbour, to name a couple others. So it's a fun cast. Sean Gunn playing Weasel and G.I. Robot, I believe, which is interesting. But I'm not gonna lie, I've seen this trailer now, right? And I've seen everything else that James Gunn has done in the superhero movie vein, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous about this, because how many more? I mean, James Gunn knows what he's good at, right? Which is great. He's great at making a certain type of film that at least I've seen in the superhero genre. What I'm less certain of is, is he just uncomfortable of breaking out of that mold? Because this is I watched this trailer and I go, this looks fine. It looks fun. How many times have I seen this before from James Gunn? The ragtag group of heroes that nobody else wanted and now has to go on a super secret, world-saving mission that will threaten their lives, and they bond together and then they save the day. I get it that that's sort of a more vague trope, so it's not just James Gunn who does these things, but Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad, and now Creature Commandos. I'm just sitting here going, I appreciate that James Gunn knows what he's doing with these kinds of stories. He's made 3 Guardians films. He made the Suicide Squad, and he made Peacemaker, which was basically the same premise, right? A ragtag group of heroes who didn't like each other at first, and now is forced to kind of come together to save the world. Okay, I get it. I've seen it before, and not only that, but they make it so explicit in this trailer that this is the Suicide Squad, but with monsters. And I'm going, okay, interesting. So he's basically just remaking the Suicide Squad, but with monsters. So yeah, guys, if you can't tell, I watched the trailer, and nothing inherently about the trailer made me go, oh, this looks terrible or anything like that. Not at all. I think the trailer looks fine. It looks fun. It definitely looks like an enjoyable series. I'm sure it will have all the sensibilities of a James Gunn in there. And look, I have to add the caveat that nothing I've seen from James Gunn I've disliked. Obviously, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know the 3 Guardians films have not necessarily been my favorite of all time from the MCU, but I enjoy all 3 of them to varying degrees. I really enjoy the Suicide Squad. I really enjoy Peacemaker. And what gives me a little bit more pause about what I just said, so to play devil's advocate to my own point, is that Superman, the upcoming film, looks a little different than that. It actually, in fact, it seems very different. You have a big cast of characters for sure, but it doesn't look like he's doing his traditional bring together a group of heroes that don't have any business being together and seeing how they work. So that gives me some hope in that regard, at least. But yeah, at the end of the day, I watched the Creature Commandos trailer and I went, yeah, I feel like I've seen this before from James Gunn. It didn't make me less excited about the project, but I think it had an opportunity to make me a little bit more excited, and I just don't think it delivered on that front. But let me know in the comments down below if you guys saw the trailer and you guys are just as excited, if not even more so, for Creature Commandos coming out in December 2024. All right, guys, so let's get into the next little topic here. I won't spend as much time on this as I did with Creature Commandos because I want to get to some of the Hall H stuff from Marvel, but another trailer dropped over the last weekend, which was the new trailer for The Penguin, which I feel like the first trailer, it came out basically a month ago, right? Like a month and a half ago. So they're really ramping up the marketing campaign now. The show comes out, I believe, to September 18th is when it premieres. I could be wrong about that. Maybe not. But it's premiering very soon. Because honestly, I've been just kind of starved for content from this Batman universe. And so we got a little bit of a panel as well about the Batman and the Matt Reeves universe, which I'm not going to go super in depth on. But there were a couple nuggets that were interesting. First of all, it was confirmed that Colin Farrell's Penguin will be back for the Batman Part 2. Super exciting because he was a great addition to the first Batman film. Obviously, he gave an outstanding performance. And I think from the trailers from this particular show, it looks like, yeah, he knocked it out of the park, which is great. And the other thing, which has been really encouraging because the Batman came out in early 2022. And so it's been a long time since we've gotten to see anything from this universe again, especially the Robert Pattinson character, right? It's been, I think for him, it'll be 4 or 5 years before he returns to the screen as the Dark Knight. But we did get an update. The Batman Part 2 will begin filming in early 2025. So that is also, I think, just as exciting news as anything else from Comic-Con. I shouldn't say as anything from Comic-Con, but from this section of the panel. That being said, we also got another trailer, like I said, from the show, from The Penguin. And yeah, I think it looks, it reiterates everything that I said in my previous thoughts. You can go check those out on the YouTube channel as well, where I talk about the first trailer. It looks great. It looks really grounded. It looks gritty. We get a little bit more of Sophia Falcone. And it looks like it's going to be a real struggle between her and Oz to kind of, be kind of the kingpins of the underbelly of Gotham City, which I think a lot of what makes this trailer really interesting is that it seems to flesh out Oswald Cobblepot as a very complex character in the sense of, he understands the social dynamics, the social system that's in place in Gotham. And he goes, okay, so you have, Batman at the top, but I can, rule this underworld part of it. And because Carmine Falcone was killed in the first film, and then Batman, wreaked havoc. Obviously not his fault necessarily, but he wreaked havoc in the first film with the flooding of the city. Penguin sees this as an opportunity for him to really take control, and I think that that's awesome. The action looks really gritty and grounded. It does have a very similar aesthetic to the Batman film, which I think is very intentional. It has that sort of muddied, dark, kind of almost orange tinted kind of look from the Batman, which I think is fine. I think it's great. I just hope that not every single project that they do in here looks exactly the same, because then we're just going to kind of get old, kind of get tired from it. It's going to look a little old. But anyways, I think for this show, it looks really great. The dialogue as well looks great. I'm trying to remember a couple of lines in particular that I remember. Nothing stands out right now, but I just remember, listening to the dialogue and going, it feels like an HBO kind of show, and Colin Farrell obviously looks fantastic as the Penguin. And so, yeah, I watched the trailer. It didn't really heighten my anticipation, but I was already super excited to see this show. And I think that also the news that he will be coming back in the Batman Part 2, and then you have the Batman Part 2 filming early next year. So hopefully coming out, maybe you'd hope they could push it to early 2026, maybe. Right now it's November 2026, which is just crazy to me. I really hope it's a lot sooner than that. Maybe they can push it up to the summer. I don't know. But I hope that, if they make Batman Part 3, if they make other shows like Arkham or whatever, I know the Arkham series had gone into all sorts of stages of development and then is no longer happening anyways. That being said, I'm really, I'm hoping that, we get a lot more content from this universe, because it's exciting. I think that this is one of the universes that's the most unique going on. I think it is interesting that we have 2 concurrent DC universes going on as well. But again, if you make good product, then none of it should really affect the other. All right, so now that we have talked about the couple trailers, let's talk about Marvel Hall H. So what I'm going to do first is we have a couple segments left, and I'm going to basically do a quick rundown of what we learned from the Hall H panel, and then we will do a more in-depth discussion at the end of the episode about the final announcement. If you haven't heard already, I don't know why I'm being so mysterious. Of course you've heard, it's probably in the title and the thumbnail and everything, but just to kind of have the pretense of suspense, let's go through all the announcements, and then we'll talk about the final one at the end of the episode. So Marvel had their Hall H panel. We're used to these being grand events. In fact, the past couple, they've gone up there and really just, thrown us their entire slate, which I think, honestly, once in a while is okay. Every year or every other year, I think, is a bit much, right? Especially with the volume of projects that they have going on. I think, actually, it works quite well to have this mixture of, maybe one year you focus on a few movies like they did this year. Another year, maybe you have a bunch of things in production. So you have like a quick speed run of 5 or 6 projects. But then the next year is more of a let's show you what's ahead kind of thing. And you kind of rotate that out, in and out here and there. The other thing too is that I also suspect that they will be doing these things anyways at D23, where they will be like, here's the next, 6 TV shows and a couple other movies like Shang-Chi 2 that we have. Because I remember they did this a couple Comic-Cons ago, right, where they announced all the Phase 4 stuff, and then a couple months later at D23, they were like, also Moon Knight, also She-Hulk, also Miss Marvel. And then I think they confirmed a couple other things as well in there, like another movie or something like that. So I suspect that at D23, which we will be trying to cover as it happens, I think, in a week, that I suspect that things like that will be happening as well. But we'll have to see about that. For now, in this panel in particular, Kevin Feige got up there. He said, we're focusing on 3 films that are coming out next year. Seems to indicate that Blade is not coming out next year, although iffy, who knows? Maybe he just, he said, I didn't hear his exact wording. I obviously wasn't in there myself. Maybe he said something like the next 3 films, or maybe he said 3 films that are, close to coming out or something like that, which doesn't exclude the possibility that Blade, doesn't come out in 2025 in November as it's slated right now. Then again, who knows? Honestly, that film may never come out. It may come out in 2027, 2026. Who even knows? So he said we're going to focus on 3 films. Ended up being a lie, but we'll get to that. And I want to go through some of my thoughts and the biggest reveals from the panel. So First up, we had Captain America: Brave New World. The first trailer, guys, really did a lot for me because, well, yes, I enjoyed parts of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought it was a very flawed series, and a lot of storytelling issues in that series, but there were a lot of really good things in there. I think top of the list is definitely that transition from being Falcon to Captain America for Sam Wilson. I really think that they, if they had one job, and they did really have one job, is to make the audience believe, whoever watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I suspect that there will be a lot of people who watch Captain America 4 and go, oh, I vaguely remember 6 years ago at the time. Because when Captain America Brave New World comes out in 2025, it will have been 6 years, crazy, since Endgame. But I think, there will be enough people who come out to Captain America Brave New World and go, oh yeah, I remember at the end of that movie, Steve Rogers handed him a shield, and so now he's Captain America. And so actually in that way, I almost think that the way that they're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier to Captain America 4 is almost the perfect way they should be doing these TV to movie transitions, right? Because, if you watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, will you know who Joaquin Torres is? Sure. Will you know who Isaiah Bradley is? Of course. Will you get the nuances of why those two characters are important to Sam? Absolutely. And why it's important that he's wearing his suit that he is at the beginning of the movie, the white suit, and then now he's wearing the blue suit. Yeah, for sure. But it's complicated, because I'm not saying that The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is an unnecessary story, but I am saying that if you kind of go on the base, level, the surface level, right? Then Falcon and Winter Soldier could be just summarized as he starts out as Falcon, he ends as Captain America, something that if you didn't watch the show, you could have implicitly understood. And I think that actually really works, because again, not saying the show doesn't have value. I think the conversations about Isaiah Bradley in the war and the experiments that were done to him, and how America would accept or would not accept a black man being Captain America, those are really powerful conversations that were had in that series. And I appreciate those scenes the most, honestly. I don't really appreciate the, Sharon Carter flag smasher part of the show, per se. But a lot of the other conversations, especially the ones with Sam and Isaiah, are wonderful. So I'm not saying that the show doesn't have value in itself. I'm just saying that from a story MCU plot perspective, it actually works out quite well, where you can go from Endgame to Captain America Brave New World and be like, yeah, that seems to make sense, at least from what I'm seeing from the trailers. All that aside, because I was not necessarily the biggest fan of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was a little hesitant about this film. I went, okay, and Red Hulk, by the way, not to bury the lead, Red Hulk is a character that I go, do we really need Red Hulk? I wasn't quite sure. I think it's one thing to have Bruce Banner kind of Hulk out and whatever. I'm just very hesitant to see a very old Harrison Ford. No offense to Harrison Ford. I don't mean old as in a bad thing. Just a very, like an elderly statesman. He's the president of the United States in the film. Turn into this giant red muscular CGI character. I don't know. People say who are there who saw the new footage where he actually hulks out. They say it's pretty good, and the design and the VFX are really good. I don't doubt that. I'm just saying that me personally, it wouldn't have been my first choice. But all that aside, it is happening. It's gonna happen. Leader is coming back from The Incredible Hulk, one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite MCU film. So a lot of things kind of going into my lack of excitement. But the first trailer did a lot for me. Did a lot for me to make me excited. It looked like it really was going back into that espionage paranoia thriller that I loved from The Winter Soldier. So we got some little tidbits here and there. Couple of which I was like, didn't we know this already? Couple of which I was like, oh, interesting, and the couple that are really exciting. So first thing that I thought we maybe knew, but maybe we didn't, is that Sam Wilson will not have the super soldier serum. I guess this wasn't explicit now that I think about it. But I also, I don't know, the fact that they felt like they had to make it explicit up there was interesting, at least. Maybe it'll be a big part of his story, or maybe it's another big fake out, and maybe he will have to take the soldier serum later on. There are a lot of super soldiers running around right now in the MCU, by the way. You have Bucky, you have U.S. Agent, you have, you did have, I guess, Steve, does Steve count? I don't really know. You have Bucky, you have U.S. Agent, all the power brokers, although Carly was killed. I guess Red Guardian also probably took the serum at some point. So a lot of super soldiers just running around here. And And I think that it would work better narratively if Sam didn't have the super soldier serum. So there's that. We also got confirmation that Tim Blake Nelson is playing the leader, which, I don't know. I was following some Twitter feeds, and, one of them he said something like, revealed, Tim Blake Nelson reveals that Mr. Blue is the leader. And Mr. Blue from The Incredible Hulk, if you remember, he was texting as Mr. Green to Mr. Blue trying to find a cure, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I mean, didn't we know this already? I was a bit confused about all of that. But anyways, if you weren't, 100% sure, now we're 100% sure. So yeah, there's that. Something that kind of fits into this camp of, I thought we knew this, but maybe not, because maybe there was some ambiguity, but it appears that there isn't, is that Red Hulk is indeed Thunderbolt Ross. Now, there were some interesting, and I would say unlikely, but interesting theories going around when the first trailer came out, that because it's very intentional that we don't see Red Hulk's face at the end of the trailer. Maybe they're trying to hide the fact that Thunderbolt Ross isn't the Red Hulk, and it's someone else. Unlikely, because the Red Hulk in the comics is Thunderbolt Ross, and you have Thunderbolt Ross in the film. It would feel like a very odd fake out unless there was a very good reason for that in the story. And this is coming from someone who, again, I personally didn't really want to see Red Hulk in this film, but now that we're getting him, and he looks really good in the trailer, as does Harrison Ford, who looks like he's having a lot of fun. It's a big contrast from when he was doing press for the Star Wars films, I will say, which is kind of funny. Anyways, it is confirmed from the trailer and from Harrison Ford's mouth himself that, yes, Red Hulk is Thunderbolt Ross. Okay, great. Now we get to the two announcements that are quite interesting. One has been rumored for quite a while, but not confirmed. And the other has not been rumored at all, which I want to kind of, before we get into Thunderbolts, want to talk very briefly about scoop culture, which I think needs to be addressed a little bit. Because, yeah, scoop culture can be right, but I think it needs to be called out when it's wrong. But anyways, we will get there. So the first thing that these scoopers had been rumoring for a long time is that Tiamat is going to be a part of Captain America Brave New World. Kevin Feige confirmed. He confirmed this about a week ago when he talked about Eternals 2, which is very sad. He said Eternals 2 is not happening, but you will explicitly see the ramifications of that film in other films, especially one that with a trailer that just came out, which was obviously Captain America Brave New World. And now they confirmed it here. From what I hear from the trailer footage, it sounds like they're referring to it as Celestial Island. And not only that, but we are getting adamantium in this film. So it looks like the Celestial is going to be made out of adamantium. Now, what this means for the wider MCU, I talked about this briefly in that breaking news video. I don't know. It actually could open a ton of possibilities. For example, I personally think this points directly towards I think it points towards a couple avenues. Obviously one being Wolverine at a certain point, right? Because you don't introduce adamantium without having Wolverine in the back of your mind. Okay, that's that. How he fits into the MCU, though, is more interesting. And I think that what you might be looking at here is something where this has been rumored for a while now, because of how scarce of a resource vibranium was and how important it became in Wakanda Forever, with two nations now having vibranium, and those two nations having, somewhat of a truce at this point. And then with the hint that Namor wanted to attack, or was waiting for other nations to come and attack them, and whatever. I think we are heading towards a full-out vibranium adamantium war panic kind of thing, where if these Wakandan nations, and who knows, maybe Shuri makes an appearance in this film, because I think these precious metals are very interesting. Would be of big interest to characters like the Black Panther. So maybe Shuri shows up, maybe Namor shows up, but I think we are heading towards kind of an all-out war over these resources. Like maybe the rest of the world says we don't need vibranium anymore, and they just go after adamantium, which freaks the Wakandans out. Maybe the Talokans, I don't know what the specific word is, but Talokan out as well, and they all kind of band together and there's a war. I don't know. That's generally my thought. And if that's where they go, I would have a hard time believing that Weapon X, Wolverine himself, is not a part of that war in some capacity. Perhaps coming after Secret Wars, maybe before. But, I think it would be, it seems to be, this is where this is one of the possible avenues, I should say, that it seems like they're heading. So there is that. And finally, one of the things that scoopers had gotten entirely wrong, which I want to address in just a second, is that Giancarlo Esposito, who all these scoopers had been claiming was going to play GW Bridge. I have no idea who GW Bridge is, even after people explained to me. I was like, okay, whatever. And honestly, frankly, I don't really know who this character is either, but I think that that's fine because we're going to get introduced to him, and it seems like he'll be coming back for a Disney Plus show. Giancarlo Esposito is playing Sidewinder, who is the king of the Serpent Society. Now, before we get into Serpent Society and Sidewinder, just want to address this because, look, for these scooper people, right? It's fine to listen to them and kind of just read through their tweets or whatever and go, yeah, I mean, like, you know, sure, they're right some of the time. Because, yeah, I mean, they were right for the most part with this adamantium, Tiamat, celestial kind of thing. Great. Not saying that some of the sources that they have aren't reliable or they, you know, maybe, I don't know, guessed right. I don't know. But it's, you know, I'm not saying it's not fun to kind of read through these tweets. I do myself. I keep up with these news things and, you know, I kind of pocket these in the back of my mind and go, okay. But I think it's really important as well to really not treat these reports as, you know, as gospel and to really just focus in, if you want to go off of official news or whatever, to just go off of the ones like Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, because with all these leaks and rumors, it, you know, who knows, right? Maybe these were actual sources that just got information wrong or whatever, but they can be wrong. And I know this because this is a recent example of this, right? With all these sources saying Giancarlo Esposito was playing GW Bridge. Everyone was so confident. And Giancarlo came out and he was like, no one's guessed that. And he could have been lying, for sure. Turns out he wasn't, because who was talking about Sidewinder? Nobody. And so I just want to say, because not to just disparage scoopers, it's not what I'm here to do, but to say that, you know, especially with all these cameo reports and all these other things going on, it can really get us to build an image of a film before we see it in our own heads, and then when those things don't happen, we get disappointed. And I think that that's actually quite dangerous. Because I think it makes our expectations ruin what was otherwise a good experience. And so, I just want to say, I think this is a good lesson for me as well, but hopefully for the rest of us, that these people who scoop things, I'm not saying that they're not reporting what they're hearing, but sometimes what they're reporting is incorrect. And in this case, everyone said GW Bridge and it was wrong. So just want to put that out there. Anyways, in terms of Sidewinder as a character himself, really don't know a lot about him. But as the king of the Serpent Society, I think it is interesting. I suppose no stone goes unturned for Kevin Feige, because obviously the Serpent Society was going to be, or was the fake title of that the third Captain America film. And then they obviously did that bait and switch, and they turned it into Captain America Civil War. What role the Serpent Society is playing is interesting, because I think that it was reported earlier, obviously, that Serpent Society was going to be playing a much bigger part of Captain America Brave New World, and yet it looks like, you know, with recent reshoots and all that going on, it looks like the Serpent Society was going to be cut out of the film, or at least their role was going to be greatly reduced. But now I'm not so sure. I do worry a little bit that this film is getting a little bit overstuffed. You have Giancarlo Esposito, Serpent Society going around there. You have Red Hulks. You might even have Green Hulks showing up. You have the leader. So, you know, I worry a little bit, especially adamantium, Tiamat. So maybe the film is getting a little crowded, but again, you know, MCU films are generally pretty good at juggling these sorts of things. So I have no doubt that things will be fine. It's just something I wanted to bring up here as well. So anyways, we talked about Captain America Brave New World a lot, also mostly because that's the one that we have the most to talk about, but the next couple have a couple little interesting tidbits here and there. I'm going to speed run through them a little bit more before we get to the ending announcement. Okay, so next up we have Thunderbolts. And honestly, Thunderbolts, we did not get a ton of information on, honestly. We got the cast on stage, and we got another tease that the asterisk means something, but we're not allowed to know until we watch the movie. I still think, even if that asterisk means something, maybe it's the symbol for Sentry, or I don't know. Maybe because the Thunderbolts are a footnote in some document. I don't know. I just think it's kind of weird, and I don't think it should have been part of the title itself. But anyways, it is. I also think the logo now is really lame. It's just thin font. But yeah, regardless. So the cast was on stage. I think Louis Pullman was there as Sentry, as Bob. I forget Bob's last name, but some Bob somebody. They made some jokes about it, I think, on stage. And yeah, we got to see the cast. The one thing that is interesting to me, and I suppose this is the one big reveal that we did get, which I question whether it's actually truthful or not. So before we get to that, actually, I wanted to say we got the cast on stage. They look like they're having a great time. David Harbour showed up in costume. I love David Harbour. He's awesome. And then the trailer footage, everyone said it was really interesting. It looked like they were all individually sent to this one particular place, and it was all set up, which I think that's really interesting. So yeah, I can't wait for it. But the one interesting tidbit that I did hear from this panel is that allegedly, because the moderator basically said, so Kevin, we just had Thunderbolt Ross on the stage with Harrison Ford, and this team is called the Thunderbolts. Now, before I get to Kevin's answer, I want to say that all these questions are vetted beforehand. There's no way that these questions aren't pre-approved by Marvel. And this is Marvel's PR spin, right? They want to get all the information that they want to get out, into the public. And so the fact that this question was even asked in the first place makes me a little suspicious, actually, because Kevin Feige's answer was then, sometimes in the comics things have the same name. There's no relation. And that makes me really pause, because on the one hand, he could be right. On the other hand, all these circumstances lining up, you have Captain America and Thunderbolts back to back. Okay, Thunderbolt Ross is the Red Hulk in the first film. Okay, maybe he dies in that film, and maybe this team is called the Thunderbolts in his name. That could be simple. What I don't buy is that there's zero connection, because I think that Thunderbolts is such an interesting name, and just to have another character called Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, especially with Kevin Feige, I would assume, approving this question to go out and beforehand, is super, super fascinating to me. And so while he says there's no connection, I personally don't buy it. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot from the Thunderbolts panel. We'll be getting that film, I think, in May of 2025. So it should be exciting. And finally, the last big film panel that they did, obviously they talked about a couple other things at the end, but the last big thing in terms of substance here was the Fantastic Four, which has been renamed to Fantastic Four First Steps. I think it's cute. I think it's fine. Did it really need a title change? Not really, but it got one. So yeah. It seems like it's really leaning into the space race in this retro alternate universe 60s film, which I think is very exciting. It seems like they shot some test footage as well, which they showed interspersed with some concept footage as well, which everyone seemed to really like. It seemed to have a very distinct tone with that retro future, but 60s kind of setting, which I think is really awesome. And it seemed like the cast really genuinely were gelling together, which I think is just such a great sign, because that's what you really need if the Fantastic Four are going to be such an integral part of the MCU moving forward. It seems like they all really like each other, which I know seems kind of silly. But you got to have that kind of chemistry in there, right? Which is, it's I think it's really cool to see. Other little tidbits here and there. The test footage included Galactus, which I saw a couple leaked pictures of. It looks interesting. Looks a little more human actually than I thought with the eyes. Seems like they're on some game shows as well. And yeah, I think that's all really awesome. Couple other little things here and there is that both. The Fantastic Four will be in both Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. And that's really cool. I think, I really stand by the fact that the Fantastic Four, along with the X-Men, will be the big anchors for the next little bit of the MCU going forward. So I think it's really important that they get this right, which I think they will. Also, Matt Shakman, by the way, was born to make this kind of movie. If you're going to make this specific kind of Fantastic Four movie, Matt Shakman, with his WandaVision directing in all the sitcom eras and stuff like that, I think is just the perfect guy. So I think that's really exciting. I know John Watts was going to direct this film. Honestly, though, with the direction that they're going now, I think this is awesome news. I really hope John Watts, by the way, gets some more work in the MCU now that he's officially not directing Avengers 5 and 6, and he's not directing Fantastic Four. I hope he comes back to the MCU, because it cannot be overstated enough how incredible of an achievement those three Spider-Man films were, especially that they were done in 2017, 2019, and 2021. In a span of 5 years, we got 3 Spider-Man films. That's amazing. Anyways, I digress. Fantastic Four and new title. And yeah, I think that's about it. So we got the cast there, and then they went off stage, and Kevin Feige said, okay, so one other thing. kind of in the vein of Steve Jobs. And that one other thing, the screen went dark. There was a montage of Civil War, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame, and the Russo brothers, who have been rumored as of late to be the directors of the next two Avengers films, came up on stage and officially announced that they will be. What's more important to me, actually, is who's writing these films. And yeah, it turns out that Marcus and McFeely wrote all four of those Russo brother films, and it looks like McFeely is going to be writing these two Avengers films. A little bit of a bummer that it's not going to be the duo, and I hope that that's not going to be a detriment. I hope it doesn't, we don't realize by the time Avengers 5 and 6 come out that, oh, no, it was Marcus who was, kind of the real driver behind the dialogue and everything like that. I doubt it. I think it's going to be totally fine. And so, yeah, I mean, I think all things considered, this is great news. I heard a report recently that they're paying the Russos an incredible amount of money to come back, which I'm sure they're banking on the fact that if they can get themselves back on track, if they can get people looking forward to these two Avengers films like they had been with other films, and they frankly don't have a lot of time in terms of projects. Like, I don't think Agatha or Ironheart or Armor Wars or, I'm sure Daredevil will be exciting, but I don't think those are going to move the needle per se. We'll see. But, you have Captain America, you have Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, maybe Blade, and then maybe Doctor Strange 3, maybe Shang-Chi 2, and then you head into your Avengers films. And I don't know. I mean, I think they're banking on the fact that these Avengers films are guaranteed billion-dollar films, which I'm sure they will be, if they're anything close to good. And I don't know if they're going to make that kind of $2 billion kind of mark that the other Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgame, did. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's why I guess they feel so confident in giving the Russos that much money. Speaking of that much money, though, they revealed the title of Avengers 5. It's Avengers Doomsday, which will come out in May 2026, and Avengers Secret Wars in May 2027. That's exciting. But then what came out was the big showstopper. So a bunch of Doctor Doom, people dressed up in Doctor Doom costumes, came out on stage, and they said, we need the greatest actor to play this character, and it was Robert Downey Jr. That's incredible. And the final segment will be me talking about why, and where I think it could go from here. But I personally was quite excited. I heard a couple of my friends saying this is very desperate. It feels like they're reaching here. It feels like they don't know what they're doing. I get that on the one hand. But I think there's a fine line between desperation and course correction, and to me this feels more like course correction. Perhaps that's just more of a subjective, maybe I'm more optimistic, but I think seeing Robert Downey Jr. back, who again, speaking of money, apparently they're going to pay him something like $80 million for these two films, which is just unbelievable. Again, they're banking on the fact that these two films will make combined at least $2 billion, which not that it's a safe bet, but if these two films are good, I think these two films could make $3 billion combined. So I suppose that's their calculation there. Regardless, though, it's a lot of money for just this one guy, especially if you're going to consider that these two films will probably have like 60 other MCU characters, and probably like your Hugh Jackmans are going to get a payday, Ryan Reynolds, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, all those guys will probably get a huge payday. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be super interesting to see how that works out there. But regardless, Robert Downey Jr. is back as Victor Von Doom, is what they said in the panel. So that is exciting. That's how they ended the show. It just went out with a bang. And I think, all things being equal, we'll see about the TV shows, what they talk about them at D23. I'm excited, though, about where this is all heading. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think and if you guys are excited about these announcements as well. So finally, to wrap up, let's kind of dive into this Robert Downey Jr. news, because now the question becomes, and we won't know, I don't think at the very least until Fantastic Four, which is maybe where he will appear for the first time. I'm 50-50 on it, honestly. I think I'm leaning maybe like 35% he shows up there for the first time. Because again, I mean, you didn't need Thanos himself to show up at the end of Ragnarok to set him up in Infinity War. He just showed up in Infinity War. You knew he was coming. So perhaps they need to lay the groundwork, in the next coming films, that there's this guy named Dr. Doom. Doesn't matter really who's playing him up until he shows up. So yeah, 35%. But he'll show up in Doomsday. But I think the big question for us now is to speculate how how is this going to work, right? Because while you could say, on the one hand, just get Robert Downey Jr. back, I think it needs more of an explanation than just let's get Robert Downey Jr. back. And so I've convinced myself that there are three main distinct possibilities with this going forward. Some, kind of, I think, highly unlikely, and some I think are perhaps more interesting than others. So let's start out with the least likely, in my opinion. And that is just that, it's Victor Von Doom. He has zero relation to Iron Man. It just looks like Robert Downey Jr., and maybe he'll just wear a mask the whole time. And we just wanted to get Robert Downey Jr. We're just paying him $80 million just to be Victor Von Doom. Which, if that's the case, I think that screams desperation. So, if that becomes the case, and I'm not saying, by the way, I feel like I have a little bit of a different stance, right? Because I think desperation, we can speculate all we want about whatever. It's like, desperation, this, and they're clinging to this or whatever. Until we see the film itself, though, I'm in no position to really judge, because perhaps something was desperate. If the end product is amazing, then I'm not going to complain at all about it. I'm really not. So, even if they were desperate, even if this was the avenue that they were going in, that it was just simply Robert Downey Jr. replacing Victor Von Doom, then for the record, if they execute it well, then I'm going to say I think it's a little weird still, but I have no problem with it. So we'll see. But on the surface, it just doesn't make sense to me. Why would you go through all of this hassle to get Robert Downey Jr. back, to pay him that much money when you could have gotten, I don't know, his Oppenheimer co-star, Cillian Murphy, who certainly could not have been worth, no offense to Cillian Murphy, by the way, but I mean, Robert Downey Jr. and what he means to the MCU is just simply unparalleled to any actor in terms of especially money. So, Cillian Murphy, he won the best actor. He's a brilliant actor. He was fan casted by some people as Doctor Doom. He was certainly not going to be worth $80 million for 2 films. He was going to be expensive, but he was not going to be worth as much as Robert Downey Jr. was. So why go through all that trouble when there are so many other amazing actors out there who would have, probably loved to have done the role, especially for that kind of paycheck of like even $30 million for 2 films or $40 million for 2. I don't know, whatever. We're just throwing numbers out here. I have no idea how much other actors actually get paid for these kinds of things. But anyways, it doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I mean, that is a possibility that it's just Victor Von Doom from another universe, and it just looks like Robert Downey. It looks like Tony Stark from Earth 616. And they never even address it. Like, the characters don't even talk about it. I don't know. I feel like that's weird. Here's the middle ground. The middle ground is that Robert Downey Jr. is playing Victor Von Doom, who really resembles Tony Stark. And that is a point of contention in the film. So while the character that Robert Downey Jr. is playing is Victor Von Doom, who has no relation to Tony Stark, the fact that he does look like Iron Man is a plot point in the film somehow. Maybe, I don't know, Tom Holland's Peter Parker gets some trauma from this, and he feels like he can't kill Doom because he reminds him so much of his old mentor and everything like that. I mean, that could be a plot point. Is this what I think is the most interesting? No. It is certainly more interesting than if they just covered Robert Downey Jr.'s face with a mask the entire time. And we're just like, yeah, this is Dr. Doom, whatever. I mean, sure, I guess. It has some narrative weight, but I also think that what I'm going to talk about in my third possibility, you could have this happen as well, on top of what I'm going to talk about. So the third possibility that I see, and if you guys see any other possibilities that I'm missing out here, please let me know in the comments down below. I think there are a lot of really fascinating ways that they could go with this, and I'm excited to see what they actually do here. But the third possibility, and the one that I've been hearing people talk about, is that this is a variant of Tony Stark. Now, a couple things with this. Because there are pros and cons to all of these, right? Cons are that this is not going to be Doom. Like, this is not going to be Victor Von Doom, born in Latveria kind of origin story. A couple people have pointed out maybe you could have this version of Tony Stark, maybe his parents died when he was much younger and he was taken in by this rich family in Latveria, and he, did his tech genius stuff there and, ruled the world, and the family's last name was Von Doom and they renamed it, whatever. Like, you could definitely do that and then sort of similarly have this character kind of grow up as Doom while also being Tony Stark. Definitely possible. Other situations are that, Tony just goes by Victor Von Doom. Other possibilities is that, well, no, I should say it's because I guess this could be Tony Stark, but the Russo specifically said Victor Von Doom. And so I think whatever they do, I think that he has to go by Victor Von Doom at some point. So it could be a changed name. It could be, like a part of a different identity, maybe, but I think what is the most likely is that this is some version of Iron Man that we are seeing here, some version of that genius that turned into Doctor Doom. The other con with this, though, and this is maybe a little frustrating, is because I think that we are not going to get Robert Downey Jr. again past Secret Wars. I think that finally, after the multiverse saga is over, all these little cameo things and whatever are gone. I really do. I think it was fun for a while. I think that the multiverse saga was a way to kind of close out the past eras of Marvel for good. I think then we are going to finally move forward with our Spider-Man, Miles Morales, with our X-Men, with our Fantastic Four. But what that means is that you're going to have a temporary Doom, I think, where I don't think this is Doom. I think that there will probably be another Victor Von Doom, an actual one, which as somebody who really would have liked to have seen that organically come about, where it's, Reed Richards and Doom growing up as best friends as their children, and then there's this rivalry and whatever, and that all that comes up, and so they're kind of long-standing enemies. I like almost like Batman and Joker. It's like Reed and Victor kind of thing. I would have loved that. If you have Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards, unless there's some giant memory wipe thing, which I think is also kind of dumb at the end of Secret Wars, but if you have Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards already having interacted with it, it's like Harry Osborn, right, for Spider-Man. Peter has already interacted with the Green Goblin. So if and when he interacts with the 616's Norman Osborn, it's not going to have the same impact, because he's going to be like, oh, I know you. You're just a different version of that other guy. So I think that is really the other big con to this whole idea as well, because I do think that you want to see that traditional Doom at some point, maybe not immediately, right? Maybe you can dig into other Fantastic Four villains after Avengers Secret Wars, but I think that is the other con. But I also think that for the sake of finishing out the multiverse saga, this is fascinating, right? Because what can you do with an evil Tony Stark? And again, I was acknowledging the fact that if you're going to do Secret Wars, probably you were going to see Chris Evans show up through some portal as Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. show up in some portal as Iron Man. And maybe he still will play some Iron Man variant. It's very possible, aside from Doom, I mean. But I also think that if you're going to bring back Robert Downey Jr., I think what's more interesting to me is having him come back into the MCU and maybe play Tony Stark, but play a different version of him, play an evil version of him that's Victor Von Doom. I think that's the most interesting. Again, there are so many different ways that they can go with this, but I'm very excited, more so than nervous, because I think that, the possibilities for whatever they're going to do here are endless. So those are just my thoughts. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of what Robert Downey Jr., how he's going to fit into the MCU moving forward, and I look forward to reading those as you put them in. And guys, that will do it for episode 34 of the Access Blockbusters pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. There was a lot to talk about. I know that this was a little bit late. I'll be posting the clips as usual, and I know that those clips will be coming out about a week and a half after all of this has settled, so I apologize for that. Hopefully you guys will still enjoy hearing my thoughts and theories about how, Robert Downey Jr. can fit into the MCU, and about Comic-Con and DC and all that kind of good stuff. But in the meantime, if you're listening on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a rating and let me know what you guys think of the podcast there as well. All right, guys, that'll about do it for me, and I will see you guys in the next one.